All right, if you just joined us, this is still Enterprise Morning on Enterprise TV. Now to our main conversation for today. The mass protest in Minna, Niger State, against rising food prices and worsening economic situation rattled the Bola Tinubu administration and partly influenced the decision of the president to issue marching orders to relevant officials to work out immediate measures to check rising food prices in the country. The president's mind was conveyed by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Muhammad Idris, after a meeting of the Presidential Committee on Emergency Food Intervention in Abuja. But even that has not doused the protest in Niger State. More protesters took to the streets of Suleja to press home their demand for food on Wednesday, 2 days after the first protest in Minna and another one in Kano State. With me in the studios today to make sense of this a big story making headlines in our national dailies and the new media is Achike Chuda. He is a public affairs analyst. Good morning to you, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you so very much for being part of our show today.
Yeah.
So let's start this from a very retrospective form. And the question is this: why is it taking so much time for those in the presidency to suddenly realize that there is this need for food sufficiency since the last 7 months they've taken over administration in the country?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it has taken them time to realize this. They've always known about this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget the argument for palliative.
Yeah.
And the argument for palliative was motivated by the knowledge that things are difficult, especially after the increase in the removal of a subsidy, which created a ripple effect and created other dynamics within the country that created, again, problems for most Nigerians. So, and of course, we have seen how the palliative issue went. The hunger, but it was also an attempt to make life a bit easier for Nigerians, but we have seen how it went. Up to today, there are too many people that did not see anything meaningful for the palliative that was supposedly, done by the government. People have been asking the question, where is the palliative? Because prices have continued to soar. Inflation has continued to go up, and life has become more and more difficult for Nigerians. So when you talk about this particular situation again, I think the question we need to ask is why which tallies with your own question, why it takes a protest of a massive scale, such as one we saw in Niger State, most especially, and then in Kano. And I also hear that there was a little bit of a protest in Osun, perhaps not as big.
Yeah, true.
And then only for the government, the president, to talk about strategic game reserves being released for the citizens. What it simply tells you is that those who govern us do not have are not sensitive to the plight of Nigerians. They will do things at their own time, at their own pace, whenever they want to do it, however they want to do it. Unless situations like this force their hands, and then they respond. And so this is a reaction, a knee-jerk reaction. And so whenever you have a knee-jerk reaction, it can be said, that it is not motivated by serious thinking. That brings about specific actions. They had to respond, and so what it means is that this is a political response. They are telling the people, don't tell the people, yes, we are going to address this issue, we are going to do this. And like I said, I think it stems from the fact that we have not just incompetent people. That has always been my take, that our leaders are not patriotic, our leaders are not committed to the nation state, and that what drives and motivates them is not the work of the people, but the desire for personal gratification. And I think that is what is responsible. Because if you also look at this, in this same this same issue that everybody's talking about, the president's marching order to release the grain reserves and so on, they are now talking about 200 billion naira of the 500 billion naira that the government, I think, had 200,000, billion naira, so that the government had talked about for the purpose of I think, cultivating 500,000 hectares of land. And we know that the food basket of this country is from the north. Is
Exactly.
the north,
True.
the north, Benue, Borno, and some of these other places under severe attack, where farmers have been killed in their hundreds.
True.
And so where are you going to have the farm? Now you have taken a decision. It's a knee-jerk reaction.
Abrupt decision.
Where will the farming take place? Which farmland? The farmlands that are constantly, being invaded by the terrorists, where farmers are killed and they are afraid to go out to go and farm.
And even when they farm, it's difficult for them to harvest.
It's difficult for them to harvest. So what it means is that, that's why I said it is a political reaction. The government has not solved the problem of insecurity to farmers, especially in that part of the country where most of the foodstuffs for Nigeria, grains and the rest are coming from. So how are you going to make changes? And that's why in the next few days, in the next few weeks, in the next few months, nothing meaningful would have happened. Whether the government releases so much from the strategic gains reserve, nothing so much is going to happen, because prices of foodstuff will not come down.
Exactly.
And that's an assurance that I'm giving you. And I don't need to be a farmer. I don't need to be in government to tell you that, because we have seen these failings time and time again. But so it still remains a crisis situation. And the government should, what they should do is just to pray that this spate of protests will not move to other parts of the country. I also understand, for instance, that the police have arrested in Niger State some of the people who organized this action. That would be a very terrible mistake.
Exactly.
Because if it spreads to other parts of the country, how many people are you going to arrest? And you're going to now give the impression that it is not the people versus the government. And that is risky, even for the government itself. So they shouldn't look for ways. They shouldn't show handedness on this particular matter. They should look for a way to just try and ride along with the wave while hoping that it will not go to increase in intensity. So then 200,000 metric tons of grains. Again, I want to ask that question. For 200 million Nigerians, how much poverty, how much, hunger will it reduce? This is the question. Like I said, 200 million citizens. How long will it last? These are things we need to know. How long will it last? Is it for 1 day? Is it for 1 week? Is it for 2 weeks? If it's for 2 weeks, it's as bad as it lasted for 1 day.
True.
So if you cannot sustain this on a continuous basis for the next 6 months, then I don't see what use the release of these grains are going to be. Because it's also not about grains. I know that it's about poverty, hunger and the rest. It's also about other things that have to do with the welfare of the people.
Exactly. Now, talking about releasing grains, words on the streets, and some Nigerians have nicknamed our president as palliative president. Because often than not, his solution had always been palliatives as the solution for sensitive issues that pervade the country. Now, knowing that the president has got some lieutenants, whom he always have boasted about, saying that they would hit the ground running. The question today is, why is it difficult for the so-called lieutenants not to have reasoned above par to understand that palliatives never solves any problem, especially for a country as much as 200 million people and the biggest economy in Africa?
Yeah, and the palliative that touches maybe 0.1% of the population. People have to be able to see the palliatives, for instance. During COVID in Europe, we saw what palliatives were able to do in Britain, in France, in the United States, and so on. People, saw or felt the hand of government. We did not in this country. That was why people had to loot, government warehouses and the rest to take care to loot the various food items that they saw in those places. So palliative, it has to be able to. The palliative itself did not go around. People have not seen it, and we saw in some instances where half a bag of rice was given to a community of about maybe 10,000 people. Half a bag of rice, or maybe 2,000. Let's just even say 2,000. Is that the kind of palliative? So when I think even that appellation of the president as the palliative president is even wrong. If it's an effective palliative program that you identify with the president, then you can say yes, you can call him Mr. Palliative. It works. So the palliative itself that he has touted from the moment of his presidency is something that has never worked, that vast majority of people have not felt. So it's even wrong to even call him Mr. Palliative. The reality is that, the government has failed spectacularly in every aspect of governance. And you must go back to the issue of what governance is all about, the welfare and security of the Nigerian people. Rather than improve on the welfare of the people, they have contributed significantly to the rising poverty in the land, significantly. They have also contributed by their inadequacies and incompetence.
But what do you think
is in the land?
Yes.
So government officials, I'm sorry, so government officials, first of all, the president was warned when he was appointing ministers that the way the country is, you need to look at merit over political considerations. And he went ahead, and people say, well, he's a politician first and foremost. But I don't know whether it's enough to be a politician first and foremost. I think you should be a Nigerian president first and foremost. So that means you identify the needs of the country over the needs of certain small interests, even if they were instrumental to you becoming president. So what it means again, the fact that he did not do that and he appointed, people of questionable character, according to the EFCC, because over half of the people that he appointed into government were people who had cases, criminal cases, with the EFCC, the under investigation. So how would the fact that he appointed them doesn't mean that overnight they are going to transform and become good people and become honest and sincere people. It wasn't going to happen, and so that was part of the problem that he had. And then again, of course, they met issues on ground, big problems. And then there was the irony of them not wanting to do what they did to the PDP. Because what they did to the PDP was that for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they kept on moaning about the deficiencies of the deficits of the PDP, how the PDP ruined the country, how the PDP, made things difficult for the government that succeeded them in 2015. But when we look at all the indices, economic and social indices under the PDP, and look at what the Buhari left after 8 years, the APC government left after 8 years, you realize that we had cause to even be grateful to the PDP for what they tried to do in terms of the economy that was growing by about 7.something%. In terms of even the debt profile was about 12 billion. Buhari left it at $45 billion and all that. So these are some of the issues. Then we now have another APC government that has also spectacularly done even what President Buhari did not do in 4 years. It took completely, took Nigeria to a new level of experience. Experience of poverty, of frustration, experience of nothing working in the system, the light infrastructural deficit, energy infrastructural deficit, and so many other things. Then the frustration in the land. So what I see is that they have been overwhelmed, but most critically, they do not seem to have what it takes to turn things around, and that is what is frightening.
Now, when you say the presidency and those who work with him are currently overwhelmed, is it safe to say that the president is currently caught in a web? Because we would understand that during his inauguration, he promised Nigerians that he was going to ensure there's food sufficiency. He promised Nigerians that he would make sure that the foreign exchange, is something that is reasonable enough to give grace for FDIs to come in and for local investors to do business as well. And so many other plethora of promises that he gave to Nigerians. And now he has assumed office. It's 8 months down the line, and the president, just like you say, is overwhelmed. What do you think is the problem? So just like I did ask again, is it safe to say that the president is caught in the web?
No, you see, that's why people say words are cheap. Anybody can say anything. It's like what they're relying on now are policies. When they tell you policies, that things will get better once, because of the policies that are being put in place. What is a policy? It states you write on a piece of paper. Anybody can write a policy. You understand? It does not automatically translate into a better life for the people. So when you say, well, the president, every president says that. And so what do people do? I mean, look at even how many debates did the president engage
Exactly.
in before he was elected, before the election itself? He shunned the debates because he felt that he might be exposed in some certain areas. He did not. What's the debate all about? What does he do? He gives people an idea of the first of all, the level of awareness of the president with regards to the needs of the nation. And then it also shows you his ability, what might be at least at intellectual level, his appreciation of the things that need to be done. Nigerians did not have the opportunity of seeing a president engage in debate so that he could be asked good questions. So it's like when you say we're going to do this with electricity, how are you going to do it? When we look at the parallel state of the economy, we are going to build air conditions, in the sky for every Nigerian. How are you going to do it when we also have an idea of, our economic, the economic situation in the country and all that? So we didn't have that opportunity. And so for the president, I think that it appears right now that he doesn't have a solution.
So with your submission, are you saying that he is figuratively just there to answer the name of the president, so he would be registered in the future that, hey, we once had the president named Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
He wasn't the only one that had this ambition. Buhari also had that ambition and eventually had 8 years of governance and led the country in shambles. Ambition has to be matched with action, positive action. Tinubu said all his life, at least from the moment he entered into politics, he has always wanted to be president. And he said that with regards to political power, he says it's not given on a platter.
It's not served a la carte.
A la carte, good. You take it, you grab it, you run with it. Now he was able to do all of this. But in that statement that he was making to those people, he didn't tell them what he was going to do with it after he had run with it. So that was the issue, And so that's why he finds himself in this quandary. He so far, until he proves otherwise, he has shown that he lacks what it takes when it comes to the issue of governance, when it comes to the issue of what to do. And we have seen this president, shoot first and ask questions later. The issue of the subsidy, which is what is responsible primarily for all of the crises that we have seen, for him to come in and say, I remove subsidy. What was the discussion that went into the decision to remove subsidy, wholesale? What was the decision? And then you see this issue of Bretton Woods Institute, the World Bank and the IMF, dictating economic policies for a country is something that real nationalistic leaders have to sit down.
But hasn't it worked for other places?
No, it has not.
It hasn't worked for other countries.
A lesson is Latin America. Latin America, if you know the history of Latin America, and their exposure to loans granted them by the IMF and the World Bank, and the fact that virtually the whole of Latin America is in crisis. Argentina number one, Chile and the rest. The World Bank had to acknowledge some time ago that their model for most of these underdeveloped countries, including Africa, has not exactly worked, that they needed to look at it. That's some years back. So it's not automatic, because there are certain, economic considerations, there are certain things you have to consider. And we're looking at the issue, for instance, of even subsidy. That subsidy all of a sudden has become a very terrible word for people. That when you mention subsidy, especially to the layman, he thinks it's an evil thing. Remove it. But subsidy is what has helped the West to get to where they are today.
True.
Today, the American, European Union and the Americans, especially investors, are talking about, or when Europe is sending some team of business people and investigators to China because of the subsidy regime in China that has put their manufacturing companies, especially the auto industry, that has put them in a very advantageous position over their rivals from the West. BYD has, for the first time, overtaken Elon Musk in terms of the number of the production of vehicles that they have, of electric vehicles. And Elon Musk has been signaling the fact that if the auto industry is not protected in the United States, that there's going to be a problem. Now you have the World Trade Organization that sets standards and parameters for how nations should engage themselves in. But there's no serious nation that surrenders its freedom absolutely to the dictates of the World Trade Organization. What they have always done, and that's why you have tariffs imposed on the steel industry in France to protect the steel industry. You have tariff for the dairy farmers in the Scandinavian countries to protect, that industry. You have tariff, a lot of it, for farmers in the United States to protect, because food security is a strategic national interest of the United States. You have subsidy. I was talking about subsidy. So all of these things, you have subsidy in those places, not tariffs. Subsidy in Scandinavia, subsidy for the steel industry, subsidy for the farming industry in the United States and many other parts of Europe. But when it comes to Africa, they say no, subsidies are not going to work. And you know why they always insist on removing subsidy. It is simply because the government can no longer give excuses why they cannot pay their debts. You understand? So they will tell you, cut down on your expenses, cut down on the number of people in your ministries and your workforce, and cut down on so many other things, and then cut down on the subsidy that the people are enjoying, so that a lot of money from those savings will be able to be used to service the foreign debts that Nigeria is owing these other countries. We saw that in Greece. They made the same thing. They made all of these same decisions with regards to, increasing or reducing the cost of governance, so that they will have enough to be able to pay the debts that are owed to some of these countries. So these are part of the reasons.
Okay, so now, if you may, I would love us to juxtapose, the influence of international financial bodies, especially stemming from the structural adjustment program of Babangida, to what we have today. Is it safe to say that those in authority are in cahoot with these financial bodies to ensure that things don't just work, especially for our country in Nigeria?
People have often said that Africa can never be saved unless Africa saves itself. And they say he who goes a borrowing goes a sorrowing. Because of the level of indebtedness of African countries to some of these institutions who are controlled by Western countries, it becomes a problem, for you to, when they make certain demands on you, it becomes a problem for you to be able to say no. So African political leaderships operate under the appendages of some of these institutions. And for as long as they have not charted a path of independence, it simply means that they cannot have independence of thought, opinion, and action. And that's why once in a while they embark on policies that are aimed at pleasing their paymasters, and that are detrimental to the interests of their people. That's what we saw with the subsidy, removal of subsidy by the federal government. There's no country that does not protect its currency, for instance, no serious country, from certain forces. Unfortunately, corruption also has played a role in ensuring illiquidity in the system. So it became very difficult to also have a regime of protection of the naira against the vagaries of the international financial system. So these are some of the issues that we have been having in the country. They're also part of the problem. But then, what is the solution? The solution is not to wholesale adopt what they are telling you internationally. There are too many things that need to be done. We have deficits in virtually every sector of this country: energy, agriculture, and so many other things. Road, social infrastructure. All of these things are not in place. And so, when Cardoso was appointed as the CBN governor, people said, "Wow, he's going to, we have the magic wand and the rest." And for me, I just smiled. Which magic wand? What is he going to do? There's practically nothing, and that's why it's like they are mixing all manners of concussion in a witch's brew. When they put in one cockroach or one rat here in a normal this alchemy, and then they want to see what is going to come out. They are not sure. What they are just doing is that they are trying out policies and so on. They are not sure of the result because the problem is deeper than that. There are other economic dynamics that are also playing out, and that you need to get some of these dynamics right before you can begin to have an appreciable change. For instance, in the issue of the currency of the naira, over the issue of the currency of the naira, corruption is still playing a part. From the inception of this administration, there are so many revelations that we have seen that the politicians have not changed their ways. And if there's anything that has undermined the Nigerian state more than any other thing, it is corruption. And so the system of governance that we're using, whether the neo-capitalist structure of the Nigerian state, people will tell you that it has given rise and sustains this level of corruption. And that is the unfortunate thing about the situation we find ourselves in.
Now, when you take a look at, some couple of years back, especially with what happened with the NSAS and how it evolved and transitioned, do we hope to see such coming when you look into the crystal ball, especially as issues of food scarcity, food insufficiency bites across the country?
Hunger and poverty, are harbingers of bigger problems. Hunger is key. The primary motivation of the human person is the need for survival. When his survival is threatened because he can no longer feed his family, himself, nor his family, and other dependents, you put him in a very difficult situation, difficult and fragile situation. And the tendency for him to do something about it is exceedingly high. The people in Niger State might not be politically conscious people. The people that came out to protest, they might not be politically conscious. They might not understand issues of governance and the intricacies of governance, but they understand hunger. And they understand what hunger does. And they know those to hold responsible for the hunger, the government. And so that's why they came out. So that is the danger. And that's why you see the president and the APC government responding, talking about grains and the rest. Like I said, it's a political statement. They have that thing is not capable of doing anything for the people. It's not capable of bringing down the prices. Exactly. It is not capable of ensuring that even if the initial grains that are released are enough, but enough for how long? That means that once these things dry up, they will come back to the same situation. So this food crisis, this poverty in the country is the biggest problem that this government is going to face. If things continue along that spiral, then more and more people are going to agitate. And it's not impossible that it will get to a level where the people themselves, people themselves will start talking about the need to remove the government. There are examples here in Africa. We don't forget what happened in Sudan. Sudan was about the increase in the prices of wheat, bread, and fuel. And that was enough. And when the crisis started, it did not stop until it saw to the ouster of al-Bashir, the president of Sudan.
True.
You know, people think it cannot happen in Nigeria. It can happen anywhere. Don't forget that al-Bashir was in power for 25 years. It took 25 years for the people to finally wake up. But that of Nigeria, I can assure you, will not last 25 years if the government does not do the needful. The government has to respond appropriately, not politically, to the crisis that is ongoing in this country now.
Now, finally, in 60 seconds, for the Peoples of Solution Journalism, if you were part of the team of Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, what would be your best advice at this time to ameliorate the problem?
Well, I would have told you that there's no way I would have been part of the team. But, I mean, it's a question you have still asked. What will I do?
Yes, exactly.
That's a big one. I will do everything that is needed to stop corruption first. Because corruption is going on, has always gone on in all the governments. Corruption is going on in this government. Different people have told us this, so this is not me talking. It's about various reports that are going on. Because corruption is taking money away from the system and putting it in the hands of a few people. So let's stop the corruption. And when we stop, let's stop the corruption, and then let us stop the about $1.2 billion that we are losing every month through inefficiency, according to Mele Kyari, the NNPC MD, due to inefficiency in the system and the distilling of a crude. You save a lot of money from that on a daily basis. That puts you in a position to begin to show up the Naira. Then you also want to see people kept on putting their hope in Dangote. And then what has Dangote told us? The refinery is working. NNPC has supplied them a lot of crude oil. But Dangote says that they'll be importing crude oil. So people who are thinking that with Dangote coming on board, with the refinery coming on board, that the prices of petroleum products will go down, it's very clear that it's not going to go down by even one kobo.
Exactly.
So we've had a lot of propaganda from government. The NNPC again, the refinery in Port Harcourt is supposed to be working with other refineries to also help in bringing down the price of a petroleum product. But what has happened? Nothing meaningful. So I don't see this government delivering on anything. We want them to deliver. Let me put it this way. Because if the president succeeds, we succeed. But if he does not, then there's a problem. But so far from what I'm seeing, I do not feel that they have what it takes to bring about this change. And we need this change seriously for the good of the people of this country.
Exactly. Very, 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 very apt. Well, so far, 25 protesters have been arrested in Niger State. And how far can this arrest go in our country, in Nigeria? I'd love to say a big thank you to Mr. Ajike Chude for being part of our show today. Thank you so very much. It was really an exciting time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And for you watching, we'd love to thank you so very much also for being part of our program today. Please do well to visit our website at www.enterprisetvnews.com. Follow, like, and comment on all our social media platforms at Enterprise TV 7. On behalf of the entire team of Enterprise TV, my name is Henry Iwibike. I'll see you tomorrow for yet another awesome time. Thank you for watching.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.